35 years ago, a new continent appeared in the world. It was full of new animals and plants that humans had never seen before. And since it had just emerged, it was packed with resources that no one had taken yet. People named this continent Magmile, and many aspired to explore it and claim its wealth and treasures. Many explorers from all over the world set out in search of fortune, including a group of these explorers, who got trapped by a huge monster in the forest and had no choice but to fight it. Their leader declared, "I will become the king of this era of exploration," and attacked the monster, but a hunter and his robot found them, only after it was too late. Amidst the city's hustle, a weak and exhausted boy walked alone, stopping in front of a house door before stepping inside. Inside that house, a girl entered the hunter's room while he lay on his bed, staring at a map of Magmile. She told him, "Get up, it's already midday." He replied, "I think I'll just sleep until tomorrow." She turned on the light and said, "The sky is clear, and the weather is nice." He asked her, "A sunny day or a rainy one, which causes more injuries?" The girl thought for a moment and said, "Sunny," before leaving the room. Meanwhile, the boy reached the door and, after reading what was written on it, said, "This is the hunter's house." Just then, the hunter woke up, and the girl brought him food, saying, "Today's breakfast is a piece of bread with no jam or butter because we can't afford anything else." He said, "At least it's toasted." She replied, "Tomorrow, we won't even be able to toast it because they're cutting off our electricity." At that moment, the doorbell rang, and when the girl opened the door, the boy collapsed unconscious. Later, he woke up on the couch, and the hunter said, "I wish you had visited us in better health." The boy responded, "I'm sorry, but I've been physically weak since birth." The hunter glanced at his ID and said, "Sid Crix, why did you come here?" He handed him his card and said, "It's clear that you're financially well off despite your young age." Crix replied, "Sid Inyo, I want to pay you to save my brother. Conwis." Inyo replied, "I refuse, this isn't enough." Crix said, "I can pay you whatever you want." Inyo smirked and said, "Can you put a price on your brother's life?" Crix replied, "I don't have much time left in my life. There will be insurance money after I die, you can take it." Inyo fell silent for a few seconds, then said, "At least let me hear what you have to say." Crix, excited, explained, "My parents were explorers who traveled to the new continent Magmile. They took my older brother with them to bring me back father's tear, which would cure my illness. Before they left, my brother promised me that once I recovered, we'd explore Magmile together. But shortly after, my brother returned alone, covered in blood, and told me, mother and father died. They weren't enough. Over time, he kept training hard and studying Magmile until he earned a first-class explorer's license at a young age, and he finally went back to Magmile with a team of explorers to bring me father's tear." Without hesitation, Inyo said, "Let's go save your brother." Crix asked, "Why did you change your mind so suddenly?" Inyo replied, "Father's tear. I can sell it for a fortune." They boarded a plane, and Inyo said, "We're heading to the fortified city near Sector 6, close to the Budoka mountain forest." Crix asked, "Why not go straight to the location?" Inyo replied, "Magmile rejects anything unfamiliar, we didn't bring weapons, and we can't enter by plane." The girl in the house entered a room, turned on a massive screen, and controlled a robot, saying, "Let's begin." By then, the two had arrived in the city by plane and left on horseback. Inyo said, "This is one of the few animals tamed from Magmile. Explorers from all over the world come here. Many people died after arriving, so it became mandatory to have an explorer's badge." Crix asked, "Sid Inyo, do you have a license?" Inyo replied, "Hunters are an exception. Our job is to rescue explorers in danger." They reached the forest, and Inyo said, "This is the Budoka forest. It covers 80% of the sector. We'll continue on foot because horses refuse to go beyond this point." Back in the house, the girl said, "Sid Inyo must have reached the forest by now. I have to be there with him." She controlled the robot and directed it toward Magmile. Meanwhile, Inyo and Crix entered the forest, and Crix explained, "Father's tear restores strength to the body and multiplies physical power tenfold." Inyo asked, "Do you know why it's called Father's tear?" Then he answered, "Because it only grows on piles of corpses." He asked, "If you recover, will you become an explorer?" Crix replied, "No, I want to become a super. The supers who can create objects from nothing. People say they're not real, but I believe they exist." They kept walking, but Crix suddenly collapsed, saying, "I'm exhausted and need a few minutes to rest." Inyo called out to Zero, the girl with him, and asked her to bring him a piece of fruit. He handed it to Crix, who said, "This is a wolf radish fruit, highly nutritious." Inyo replied, "I'll charge you extra for it. Eat while we walk, we're in a hurry. They continued through the forest but soon found a man clutching his head. A scorpion latched onto him, delirious and barely conscious, pleading for help. Crick said, we have to help him. Inyo responded, do that if you want to die, and threw a stone at the man. Suddenly, giant scorpions emerged from beneath the ground. Inyo said, this is just bait, they leave the prey alive, let it wander around, and devour any human who approaches. Crick said, are there creatures this terrifying? Inyo replied, the true horror of Magmile is far greater than this. They kept walking, and Crix asked, can't we do anything for him? Not even ease his pain? Inyo replied, no, I'm the one getting paid in return. But at the same time, he killed the 3 beasts with his strength before Crix even noticed, and the man collapsed to the ground. After they walked a little further, Inyo's sensor device activated. He said, this device is linked to the explorer's badges, which means your brother is close by. Zero said, there's a falcon nest ahead, with about 20 falcons. Inyo told Crix, don't move from here. Then he went off to fight the falcons, using his superhuman strength against them. Crix hid inside a tree until he saw someone approaching and thought it was Inyo, but it turned out to be his brother. Meanwhile, Inyo continued his battle against the falcons until the remaining ones fled, and plants sprouted from the corpses of the fallen. When Crix sat with his brother said, do you realize how dangerous Magmile is? Crix replied, I'm sorry, but I was worried about you. His brother said, look. Crix saw a large pink flower before him. His brother said, this is the Abona flower. Crix was overjoyed, but then, he suddenly noticed a pile of human bones beneath the flower. His brother said, the Abona flower only grows over corpses. Crix muttered, who could do something like this? His brother responded, it wasn't enough. He grabbed a bone, moved closer, and stabbed Crix with it. He said, 2 bodies weren't enough. That's why I gathered assistance, but even their corpses weren't enough. Crix collapsed to the ground, his blood spilling beneath the flower, which absorbed it, and a fruit sprouted. His brother took it. As he moved in to finish him off, Inyo suddenly arrived, trying to save Crix with his strength. He ordered Zero to provide first aid, then said to his brother, you killed them, didn't you, your father and mother, and your allies, for something like this? His brother scoffed, he wouldn't have recovered from his illness even if he took father's tear. That's why it's better suited for someone with a long life ahead, someone willing to pay a fortune. Inyo said, he risked his life trying to save you, even though he's dying. His brother sneered, if he hadn't come, he could have lived a little longer. Zero said, I treated his wounds, but Crix weakly told Inyo, save my brother. I'm sure a monster is controlling him, like the one we saw in the forest. I know I won't make it, but my brother is a skilled explorer, he's my hero. Inyo replied, alright, I'll do it. Crix said, I enjoyed exploring with you. Then he closed his eyes, and embraced his father and mother. His brother laughed mockingly and said, he's finally dead. But before he could finish his sentence, Inyo struck him and thought to himself, this is Magmile's true horror. It magnifies greed and hatred in people. He said, you killed your father, your mother, and your allies, and in the end, you killed your little brother. There's only one way to save you. Crix's brother ate the Abona fruit, and his body grew massive and stronger. He struck Inyo, but Inyo returned the blow with double the force, and killed him with his superhuman power, saying, I'll save you. In a research center in the middle of Magmile, a scientist stood watching the surrounding cameras. Another scientist entered and told him, the time has come. If we succeed, all medical sciences will change. And you might finally get some rest after this research is done and spend more time with your daughter. He replied, I've already decided to do that. But she's at the age where she spends all her time with her friends. Suddenly, the alarm went off, and countless monsters from Magmile surrounded them, attacking from all sides. Inyo walked through a barren land, appearing younger. He collapsed to the ground, and a mysterious figure said, it's okay, you haven't reached despair yet. He extended his hand, but when Inyo tried to grab it, it disappeared. Inyo returned to his present age and saw Zero sitting by the wall. She asked, is this despair? Inyo woke up, it was just a nightmare. A girl appeared at Inyo's doorstep, holding a map that led her to his house. She remembered her father's words, if anything happens to me, go to him. Zero opened the door, and the girl said, there's someone who needs you to save him. She entered and explained that contact had been lost with the research center where her father worked. Inyo asked, what kind of research does your father conduct? She replied, he's the director of scientific research on creatures at Kyoxi Corporation. Inyo said, A massive company like Kyoxi should have its own rescue team. Why don't you leave it to them? She explained that her father gave her specific instructions to come here if anything happened to him. Inyo said, using lives for human advancement is arrogance. I don't want to get involved in something like that. Go somewhere else. She pleaded, but, my father raised me alone. If something happens to him, Inyo replied, that's not rare. There are many like you. That's reality. She said, please, Sid Shone. As soon as she mentioned Shone, Inyo remembered the figure from his dream and corrected her, I'm Inyo, not Shone. She insisted, but I'm sure this is the right place. He said, I'll help you. Whatever Shone could do, I can do too. They left together on the company's rescue aircraft. She introduced Inyo as her younger brother so they would agree to take him. Inyo ordered Zero to scout the area. Meanwhile, bears continued attacking the research center, killing all the guards and devouring their weapons. Once everyone boarded the aircraft, the team leader explained, the creature we're facing is a keel bear, normally peaceful and feeding on metals. But if provoked, its skin turns into steel, and it becomes uncontrollably violent. Right now, around 30 bears are surrounding the research center. Things are looking bad. Then, sarcastically, he added, but that's only until we get there. Everyone laughed, but Inyo interrupted, every year, 950,000 people disappear in Magmile. That includes the armed ones. A soldier responded, you sure know a lot about Magmile. Good job studying. But don't worry, we'll make sure we end up in the lucky 2/3. When they arrived, they began shooting at the bears from the aircraft, killing them. Inyo remarked, that's interesting. The commander replied, indeed. How are weapons affecting the steel-skinned keel bears? I'll tell you the secret. These bullets are made from a metal discovered by the company in Magmile. Inyo responded, I meant why the keel bears are attacking a research center. The commander dismissed it, because they're just mindless beasts. The soldiers parachuted down and opened fire, killing all the bears. Zero told Inyo, the monster is here. Inyo ordered, show me the feed. The commander said, that's Skill Gargan, the dominant creature of Sector 7. Inyo explained, it came because it smelled the blood of the bears. The monster started hurling massive boulders at the rescue team like meteors. The commander was in shock. How are we supposed to deal with this? As the boulders headed for the aircraft, Inyo remarked to it, these are just baseballs. The commander said, we'll have to use our ultimate weapon. But before they could fire it, the weapon fell from the aircraft. The commander decided to retreat. Inyo opened the aircraft door, jumped out with the girl, and landed near the fallen weapon. He told her, if you want to save your father, this weapon has to be operational. Then, he used his strength to create a support structure for it and aimed it at the monster, then at the research center. He asked, which one should be destroyed? The girl was shocked. What are you saying? Inyo continued, haven't you ever wondered why Magmile appeared in our world? It's because the world was far too boring. He climbed to a high spot, took a megaphone, and addressed the scientists inside the research center. Release the hostages, and you will be rescued. They were stunned that he knew. The professor hesitated before replying, we'll let them go. Inyo jumped down from his high position, revealing that he had been standing on the monster's head. He lured it toward the weapon, just as the girl activated it and fired, causing an explosion. The professor released the hostages, who turned out to be the cubs of the bears that had attacked the research center. On the way back, after everyone boarded the aircraft, Inyo said, the keel bears were just trying to save their children. The commander replied, the blood of those cubs can be used to create the hardest metals, and that's a patented invention of Kyoxi Corporation. Inyo asked, you killed the bears using the blood of their own children? The professor then asked, are you shown? Inyo answered, go see your daughter. A few days later, the aircraft they had been on crashed due to an unknown cause. But there were no casualties, only the commander was injured. As Inyo and the girl walked together, she told him, my father decided not to work in Magmile anymore. He replied, that's for the best. Her father arrived in his car and thanked Inyo for saving him. Inyo and Zero were sitting, watching a televised auction selling animals captured from Magmile while eating pudding. Inyo tried to take one, but Zero slapped his hand and said, don't take from my pudding unless you ask me first. Among the animals in the auction was the 7-colored bird, which had the ability to cleanse toxins from the body. The bidding started at 1 million-esque, but within minutes, someone offered a billion-esque. Inyo grabbed a pudding cup without Zero noticing and said, I wonder what they plan to do with it to pay that much money. The doorbell rang. Zero went to open it and returned, saying, why don't you ask them yourself? Inyo found the people who had bought the bird standing at the door. After they sat down, the bird's owner said to Inyo, it's clear that you're a very wealthy man. The man replied, I used to run an insurance company, then got involved in security and tourism. Zero asked, "Do you own a pudding factory?" He sighed, "Unfortunately, no." Inyo said, "If you work in all these industries, I understand how you could offer $1 billion for a bird." The man responded, "My only goal in my work was to meet this bird, and now, I've come to request your services. I need you to rescue 2 of my friends who went missing in Sector 45 of Magmile." Inyo replied, "That means they were poisoned." The man nodded, "Exactly." Zero said, "Sector 45 is known for its toxic creatures. Only idiots go there to explore." The man explained, "We were settlers." Inyo raised an eyebrow. "Settlers? Settling in Magmile hasn't been allowed for a very long time." The man said, "Yes, my friends disappeared there 30 years ago. Back then, Magmile wasn't famous yet. Because of that, the settlers had strong bonds. There was no way to survive except by helping each other. I was always with my friends Stoa and Stin. One day, while playing, I suggested we gather different insects and make them fight to see which had the strongest venom. At the time, I didn't realize what we were doing was wrong." Inyo asked, "So they were poisoned by those insects?" The man replied, "Yes. I was the only one who survived. But I ran away and left them. I never told anyone what happened. I couldn't admit that I abandoned my friends in danger and fled. After the settlement failed, we lost contact with Stoa and Stin's families. I buried myself in work to forget them. Before I realized it, I had become rich. So I decided to get this bird, no matter the cost. The bird that can remove all kinds of toxins. I'm willing to pay anything to save them." Inyo said, "The rescue fee is 100,000 ESK. And if I feel like it, I might raise the price." The man replied, "Fine, I have no objections." Inyo added, "I might also add extra conditions." The man responded, "Whatever the conditions are." Inyo smirked, "All right, we have a deal." The 2 boarded a plane and headed to Magmile. Once they arrived, Inyo asked, "How do you feel coming back to Magmile?" The man replied, "Compared to my childhood, my physical fitness has declined a lot, but it still feels familiar." He then asked, "Have you been doing this job for a long time?" Inyo replied, "Yes." The man said, "I admire you, saving lives at your age." Inyo replied, "But you have to remember, I wouldn't save anyone if there wasn't a price. And besides, anyone could do this job. The thing is, no one wants to." Zero interrupted, "There's a monster in our way." The 2 continued walking and encountered the monster. Inyo defeated it and fed its flowers to the bird. They kept moving until the man stopped at a tree with a carved mark. He recalled when he and his friends had made it, realizing he was close. He ran until he found a cave ahead. Inyo asked, "Were they inside?" The man nodded, "Yes." Inyo ordered Zero to enter with the robot while they followed behind. Once inside, the man found the container from which his friends were poisoned and remembered how they put insects inside to fight each other. Anger overtook him, and he smashed the container on the ground. Suddenly, a massive monster appeared before them. Inyo said, "That's your friend." Then another monster appeared, his second friend. The 2 monsters began fighting each other. The man called out to them, "I'm sorry I was late. Do you still remember me after all this time?" He turned to Inyo and asked, "The bird can cleanse their poison, right?" Inyo replied, "If they drink its blood, but your friends will die if that happens." The man argued, "But its purpose is to remove toxins." Inyo answered, "Yes, but only for humans. The poison in their blood now, they can't live without it anymore, because they're no longer human." They all left the cave, and the man bid farewell to his friends. Inyo asked, "Are you sure you want to leave them? If they die, it'll be mercy for them." The man replied, "No, I won't take any more lives." He released the bird and said, "Even if they look different now, they are still Stoa and Stin. I've changed too, at least in appearance." Later, the man appeared in a press conference, announcing, "I've decided to invest my entire fortune into preserving Magmile's ecosystem and lives." A journalist asked, "But why pudding?" The man replied, "Because there was an extra condition." Back home, Inyo tried to grab a pudding from the many containers stacked up, but Zero snatched it away and said, "You're only allowed 20 per day." The next day, Inyo and Zero are walking down the street and Zero stops at a candy seller and says to Inyo, "It looks like this candy tastes good. I want one." Inyo responds stingily, "I'm not paying more than 30 ESK. So, Zero goes to buy one, but the seller tells her that one costs 40 ESK. She tells him, "If you take 50 ESK from the person after me, you won't lose anything." He agrees, and she takes it. Inyo then says, "It really looks delicious." Zero replies, "Then go get one for yourself." Inyo goes to buy one, and the seller tells him that one now costs 50 ESK. Suddenly, a commotion occurs as they stand there, with a crowd gathering around a man holding a microphone. He announces, "Please welcome the miracle worker Yelena Australia. She has explored Magamil and returned 8 times. Today, she has come to tell you all something important." Yelena then speaks, "Wars in our world never end. The children who lost their parents are crying at this very moment. I am doing my best to save as many children as possible. That's why I've decided to go to Magamil for the 9th time." Zero turns to Inyo and says, "The miracle worker everyone talks about." Inyo responds, "She's not a miracle worker at all." Later, Zero searches for Yelena online and finds an article about her. It states that, to build an orphanage with a lot of money, she went to Magamil alone. After overcoming its challenges, she returned with great treasures and donated all the money to the orphanage. Zero is surprised and wonders why Inyo said that about her. She then takes her robot and goes to observe the orphanage. As soon as she sees a little girl standing alone, a memory suddenly flashes in her mind, herself, sitting in a dark place, her clothes torn, visible signs of bruises and exhaustion on her body. She then snaps out of it and notices Yelena sitting beside the girl, asking, "What's wrong?" The girl replies, "I lost my doll." Yelena says, "Let's look for it together." The girl smiles and hugs her. Suddenly, Yelena glances at Zero's robot and realizes she's being watched. Zero quickly leaves. Meanwhile, Inyo enters a library and notices the same article that Zero had been reading. He recalls a memory from his past when he was with Shoinus, a child in Magamil. They once heard a girl screaming. It was Yelena, being attacked by a monster. Shoin saved her and told her, "You're not supposed to be here." Yelena replied, "There are things I must do." Shoin advised her, "I suggest you go home before you get yourself killed." That night, after Shoin fell asleep, Inyo secretly went to watch Yelena. As soon as he found her, he saw something that shocked him. Back in the present, Inyo looks at the report and says, "Yelena is evil." Later, many people from the city come to Inyo and ask him to save Yelena because they learn she is in danger. Inyo refuses, saying, she can just perform her miracle like always. They tell him, "You should feel honored to save her." Zero says, "I think Yelena is a good person." Inyo responds, "I refuse your request." Zero then says, "Leave it to me. I will save her." The people leave, and Inyo tries to talk to her, but she ignores him and walks away. She enters her room and activates her device. Inyo then decides to head to Magamil to rescue Yelena and those with her. However, by the time he arrives, everyone with her is already dead. One of them, in his last breaths, says, "It is an honor to have died protecting Yelena." She is lying in front of the monster, about to be killed as well. Suddenly, Zero arrives, followed by Inyo, who starts attacking the monsters. But there are too many, and they surround him. He uses his power to create a bow and arrows, attacking them and forcing them back. Inyo remembers sitting with Shoin and telling him what had happened. Shoin told him, "We shouldn't save her again." Inyo responded, "We only saved her because we happened to find her and she needed help." "But we can't help an evil person," Inyo insisted. Shoin replied, "Whether she is good or evil, that decision is not mine to make. I simply saved a person who needed help." Inyo said, "I don't understand you at all." Shoin answered, "You will understand soon." Back in the present, the same monster that Shoin once saved Yelena from attacks Inyo. Inyo tells the monster, "I remember that fighting you was difficult." As he faces the monster, he thinks to himself, "Shoin, I know you weren't wrong, but I simply can't do everything your way." He then lands a powerful strike, making the monster flee and cutting down all the burning trees around him. He says, "I still have a long way to reach Shoin's level." Meanwhile, Zero searches for Yelena, but when she finds her, she sees something shocking. Inyo comes up behind her and says, "I'm sorry you had to see this. It looks like my attack was effective." Suddenly, Yelena appears, playing with the monster's corpse and pulling out its heart. Inyo is stunned. Yelena says, "Selling monster organs brings in a lot of money. If I sell this, I can save more children." Inyo tells her, "Many people died trying to save you." She replies, "They fulfilled their dream, and their souls are at peace now." Inyo tells her, "I see no guilt in you." She ignores him and continues her work. Suddenly, they are surrounded by monsters from all sides. Yelena looks at them and says, "There are so many. That means I can save even more children." She then runs away, leaving Inyo to fight the monsters while she collects their organs. When Inyo tries to go after her, Zero tells him, "There are too many monsters. It's best if you don't go." Inyo replies, "Fine," and they both leave. The scene transitions to the orphanage, where the director receives the news that Yelena has died. The little girl who lost her doll sits alone, crying, but Zero brings her the doll. Later, Inyo and Zero walk through the market. Zero says, "Sometimes, it's hard to tell who's right and who's wrong." Inyo responds, "That's just a concept created by humans." Zero replies, "People allow themselves to be exploited by ideas they created themselves." Suddenly, Inyo stops at the candy seller and says, "I want two," handing over 100 esk and telling the seller, "Keep the change, I don't want it." Zero exclaims, "The sky must be falling for this to happen." Inyo responds, "Don't worry, this is the first and last time." And then, we hear someone speaking in the background, saying, "As far as I remember, it was 35 years ago when mangacaps appeared on our planet and attracted many different people, like the pirates who sailed across the 7 seas and the hunters who saw the forests as their playground. But, as expected, exploring mangacaps came with many dangers. Many people paid for their exploration with their lives, and there was someone else who almost died because of his passion for exploration, and that person was me." Suddenly, while talking to himself, he hears the sound of a massive monster approaching. A giant turtle appears, about to devour him. The scene then shifts back to show how he got here. The man is standing in his shop when Inyo and Zero walk in. As soon as he sees them, he is startled. Inyo lies to him, saying that Zero is his daughter. The man, whose name is Dandan, says, "Every time I see him, something bad happens." Inyo tells him, "Looks like you have new merchandise." Zero walks toward a shelf and says, "Dad, this is a rare type of fish. It's very expensive." Inyo responds, "If you want it, I can buy it for you." She replies, "Are you spending lavishly today?" He says, "No, we only do this 3 times a year, but the shop owner is my friend, so he'll give us a big discount." Dandan exclaims, "A dear friend. I'm the one losing money every time he comes here, since the first time we met." A flashback shows their first meeting when Inyo was buying a grenade. Dandan told him the price was 4,100 esk. Inyo handed him only 1,000 esk, shocking Dandan. Inyo then added 800 esk more. Dandan said, "I'm not selling it for that price." Inyo replied, "This grenade is defective, it could explode without me even activating it." He then used his supernatural power to activate it, put on his glasses, and let it explode. Back in the present, Dandan says, "Since then, I've visited the eye doctor multiple times. And on top of that, rumors spread, and customers stopped coming." He continues ranting, listing moments when Inyo gave him fake money, faked injuries in the store, and did everything possible just to get a discount. "But this time, I'm prepared. I reinforced all the shelves and checked every dangerous product." After Inyo finishes collecting his items, he goes to Dandan and says, "I'm ready to leave." Dandan calculates the total and says, "That'll be 60,000 esk." Inyo is shocked by the price. Dandan declares, "This is the moment of truth. I must stay calm. I've prepared for this. I installed high-resolution cameras, night vision, and infrared scanners. After working for 40 years, I invested all my money in this security. You won't succeed this time no matter what you do." Inyo smirks and says, "I forgot that today is my spending day." He hands over his payment card and tells Dandan to deliver the goods to his home. Dandan is stunned. As soon as Inyo and Zero step outside, they pretend that the store sign falls on them. Zero is the one who actually knocks it down. She dramatically acts like her head has been split open and collapses on the ground, saying to Inyo in an overly dramatic, comedic scene, "Dad, I won't say goodbye, because I know we'll meet again." Then she closes her eyes. Dandan panics and says, "We need to call an ambulance." Inyo tells him, "You don't understand. You have to give me the discount." In the end, Dandan is forced to give Inyo a 90% discount. Inyo smiles, thanks him, and carries Zero's body away. The moment they leave, Zero opens her eyes and looks at him. Dandan is shocked and says, "He tricked me again. I surrender to his wickedness. I've made my decision. I'm going to mangacaps and starting a new life. Dying there is better than dealing with him here." At that moment, Inyo hears him say that. The next day, Dandan closes his shop, gets into his car, and decides to drive away. But as soon as he starts moving, he finds Inyo and Zero sitting in the car with him. Inyo tells him, "We've arrived home by car." Dandan keeps driving for a long distance and asks, "Is this the right way?" Inyo replies, "Yeah, just keep going straight." He then asks, "Why aren't you driving faster?" Inyo and Zero keep provoking him, pushing him to go faster. Dandan finally decides to speed up, but the moment he does, Inyo cuts the brakes and jumps out of the car with Zero. Dandan loses control and crashes into the sea. Inyo throws him a flotation ring, but his car sinks. Dandan ends up buying a boat, using all his money and even taking out a 30-year loan just to get to mangacapped. But Enro blows it up after revealing his power to him. Dandan then buys a small plane and heads toward mangacapped, but Enro stops him again, making him crash. Dandan falls into a pig transport truck heading to mangacapped. He discovers that these pigs are being sent to be fed to the monsters there, and so, he ends up standing before a massive monster in mangacapped, about to be eaten. Dandan screams, "I should have just stayed in my shop instead of coming here." At the last moment, Enro appears and saves him. At midday, Zero is sitting, watching a cat show, while Enro sits in front of her, lost in thought. He recalls the house where he lived with Shoin in mangacapped, but Zero interrupts his thoughts and tells him that she has decided to adopt a cat. However, he refuses and tells her that he hates cats. She responds, "How? They're so cute." And watching cat videos helps people cope with the exhaustion of their jobs. Enro replies, "There must be some authority figure leaking cat videos constantly to control us by making people feel that watching cat videos calms them, stripping them of their aggressive spirit so they keep working without objecting to those in power." Zero says, "But you always wear those cat badges." Enro replies, "These aren't cat badges, and besides, I don't support the idea of keeping pets." Zero asks, "Then what are those badges?" So, Enro begins to tell her a story. The scene shifts to the past. Enro is sitting with Shoin in a treehouse. Enro asks him, "What are you thinking about?" Shoin replies, "My family." Enro is surprised and says, "I didn't know you had a family. Where are they now?" Shoin responds, "I don't know. They are no longer with us. I couldn't protect them." Enro asks, "Was it because you were weak, or because you didn't try hard enough?" Shoin replies, "I was the strongest among them, and the one who tried the hardest." Enro then asks, "Then why?" Shoin answers, "Because I was the dumbest one among them." "That's why you have to be smart." The scene transitions to Enro walking in the forest when a monster attacks him. He prepares to fight, but Shoin appears and stops him, saying, "I will fight it." That night, Enro tells Shoin, "I want to be useful to you. Why don't I fight monsters? I even know how to make a knife." Shoin responds, "That's not enough. You're not ready yet." The next morning, Enro walks through the forest angrily, saying that Shoin still treats him like a child even though he is fully grown. As he talks to himself, he suddenly finds a group of people lying dead on the ground, clearly attacked by a monster. He notices that one of them has an adventurer's badge. Among the corpses, he sees a small creature hiding. Enro tells it, "Don't be scared, I won't hurt you." The creature feels reassured and moves toward him. At that moment, Shoin watches from a distance without Enro noticing. Enro takes the creature home and names it Toto. When Shoin returns home, he sees the creature and says, "It's really attached to you. Did you bring it here?" Enro replies, "Yes." "Can I keep it?" Shoin answers, "Yes, you can." That night, they are all sitting together as Enro tries to make a badge that looks like Toto, but he cuts himself. Shoin says, "I'll make it for you." He crafts 4 small badges. Enro puts one on Toto and gives Shoin a cap with the other 2 badges on it, saying, "This is a gift from me." In return, Shoin says, "I'll keep this badge." Back in the present, Zero asks, "So, Master Shoin made that cap for you. It must be very valuable to you." Enro replies, "Yes. It's the only thing he left me." Zero then asks, "What happened to Toto after that?" The scene shifts back to the past. Enro and Toto play together all day, showing that Toto loves and protects Enro. At night, they sleep beside each other, and Shoin covers them with a blanket. One day, while walking through the forest, they find a person trapped in a bear trap, calling for help. The man says, "I stepped on it by mistake while walking. I don't know who put it here." Enro says, "You're the one who said it, right? Mangacapped creatures wouldn't fall for tricks like this. Your real goal is money." He then goes to the man's bag and opens it, finding a trapped bird. The man shouts, "Leave it. It's worth 500,000 ESK. But Enro ignores him and frees the bird. The man gets angry, points a gun at Enro, and says, "Release me from this trap." At that moment, Toto smells the blood on the man's leg and tastes it. Enro tells the man, "If you shoot me, no one will be able to help you." At that moment, Toto suddenly grows into a massive monster and instantly kills the man. Then, he attacks Enro. Shoin saves Enro and asks, "Did he taste blood?" Enro replies, "Yes." Shoin then says, "Toto is that type of monster. When they taste human blood, they transform." Enro asks, "Can't we turn him back to normal?" Shoin replies, "No. Remember, Enro, this is mangacapped." Shoin attacks the monster, but Enro stops him, saying, "I will fight it." As he remembers his memories with Toto, he fights with all his strength and kills him. After they bury Toto, Enro says, you don't have to remind me that this is MANHWA, Shoin. Shoin replies, it wasn't your fault, and gives Inyo Toto's necklace. Back in the present, Inyo says, that was the first monster I ever defeated. In MANHWA, you either kill or be killed. At that moment, a customer arrives. It's a little girl who says, my dog Luca is lost and I need your help. Inyo tells her, don't worry, we'll look for him together. Then, we see Amelia, the professor's daughter, aboard a Kyrox company aircraft heading toward MANHWA. As they enter the second sector, the team captain tells her, the Sky Whale 2 aircraft is the most expensive in the company, and it will keep us safe. She replies, I hope it does. He thinks to himself, there's a reason behind all these accidents. If we solve this mystery and claim it for ourselves, it will bring huge profits to Kyrox. But I didn't expect Amelia to come. That was a miscalculation on my part. The aircraft continues on its path, but as they approach, giant frogs appear and start hurling rocks at them. They counterattack with fire, but before they can celebrate, the aircraft suddenly loses control for no apparent reason. They soon discover a long arm pulling the aircraft downward, causing it to crash. At that moment, Inyo and Zero are sitting together, eating marshmallows. Zero tells him that this is both their lunch and dessert since the marshmallows were being sold in large quantities for a low price, so she bought a lot of them. She adds that, since they're poor, this was the only logical purchase. Inyo asks, then what will we eat for dinner? She responds, marshmallows too. He replies, makes sense. As they talk, the doorbell rings. The visitor is the professor, Amelia's father. He tells Inyo that his daughter has gone missing in MANHWA, showing him a map and pointing to a place called the Octagon of Evil. Inyo responds, you've really gone too far this time. She's not just missing, is she? The professor admits, a strange creature attacked them, and they had to make an emergency landing. Inyo says, my fee will be double this time. This happened because you all thought you knew everything about MANHWA. The professor replies, you remind me a lot of Shoin. Talking to you makes me remember him. By the way, how is he doing now? Inyo says, I don't know. And my fee is now triple. Zero interrupts, that's not enough. You have to finish this plate of marshmallows before you leave. Inyo adds, yes, you have to finish all of it, or I won't go with you. Meanwhile, after the crash, Amelia manages to exit the aircraft. The captain tries to stop her, but she tells him, we can't just sit here. If they wanted to kill us, they would have done it already. She then leaves him and enters the forest, where she finds many destroyed aircraft. In the middle of them stands the person responsible for bringing down their aircraft. At that moment, Inyo and the professor board another aircraft and head toward MANHWA. The professor comments, by the time we arrive, the problem might already be over. A rescue team from the company has already been dispatched there. Inyo replies, that's bad news. The professor asks, why? Inyo says, you'll understand when we arrive. And indeed, the moment the rescue aircraft reaches the area, the entire team is wiped out within minutes. Zero, watching the events unfold, tells Inyo, just as you predicted, these are the Irener. The professor asks, what is an Iren? Inyo points and says, that. At that moment, the giant frogs approach the aircraft. The team captain, Onis, orders, prepare to attack. These must be the Iren, the original inhabitants of MANHWA. The soldiers enter the forest with their weapons, and Amelia follows them. Zero tells Inyo that she found the aircraft in the Iren territory, as well as Amelia, who is now in the forest, trying to stop the soldiers from using their weapons. But before she can, the Iren attack, forcing the soldiers to flee. The Iren then attack Inyo's aircraft because the professor is carrying a weapon. Zero warns him, and both Inyo and the professor jump out just before the aircraft explodes. The professor reunites with his daughter. Meanwhile, Inyo lands in front of the Iren and tries to speak with it, but it attacks him. They fight for a while until the Iren hit Inyo with a pile of marshmallows, covering him completely. The Iren and the giant frogs taste the marshmallows and start enjoying them, eating them continuously. Inyo says, I'm not your enemy. The Iren replies, all we want is to live in peace. Inyo responds, I apologize for disturbing you. I promise we won't come here again. The professor says, he really is Shoin's student. He must know how to communicate with the Iren. Inyo tells them, I promised him that we wouldn't disturb them again. If any of you come back here, you'll be my enemy as well. The professor replies, since you saved me twice, I want to give you a gift. Inyo says, I hope it's an aircraft and something other than marshmallows. Inyo and Zero are gathering food from a forest in MANHWA when they accidentally come across a destroyed village. As they explore, Zero says, I think I found a restaurant here. At that moment, a man appears and points a rifle at Inyo. The scene shifts to Inyo tied to a chair inside the restaurant, with the man sitting in front of him, asking, "What are you doing here?" Inyo replies, "I came to gather food because I'm going through a tough time these days. I don't want to hurt you or bother you." The man keeps his rifle aimed at him for a moment, then lowers it, takes out a dagger, and slowly approaches Inyo before cutting the ropes off him. Inyo says, "At least give me a cup of coffee." But the man doesn't respond. Inyo stands up to leave but notices a photo on the table of the man and his daughter. The man suddenly gets angry and says, "Get out." Inyo leaves and continues gathering food. Zero says, "That old man pointed a rifle at you and didn't even apologize." Inyo replies, "You seem really upset." She responds, "Of course, that was rude behavior." Inside the restaurant, the man sits holding the photo of himself and his daughter, recalling his memories. On a sunny day during the settlement period in Magamil, his daughter was outside harvesting coffee beans, while his cafe was filled with customers. One of them asked for a refill, saying, "I never expected to drink coffee in Magamil. It's impressive that you managed to grow coffee beans here." The man replied, "I can't take the credit. You should thank my daughter for this coffee." Back in the present, he places the photo on the table and looks at it sorrowfully. Meanwhile, Inyo and Zero find an edible monster. Zero tells him, "This monster has the highest rating in the Monster Gourmet Evaluation magazine." Inyo says, "If that's the case, I can't let it get away." He attacks the monster, but it escapes. He chases it down and traps it, but suddenly, a massive underground creature emerges and devours it. Inyo sighs, "I thought today was our lucky day." As they walk away, he tells Zero that this giant creature lives underground and only appears once every 10 years at most. As they continue walking, they come across a cemetery and see a grave with the name Isa on it. As soon as they approach, gunfire comes from the distance. It's the same man. He says, "What are you doing here? I told you to leave." He fires another shot, narrowly missing Inyo's head. He adds, "I don't care who you are. You're not allowed to be here." Inyo walks away. Zero is frustrated and says, "What is wrong with that man?" Inyo tells her, "He missed on purpose. He has excellent shooting skills." Zero asks, "Why are you defending him? It's completely unacceptable to shoot at someone with a rifle. That's barbaric." Inyo replies, "Unless you're protecting something important, especially if that thing is the most important thing in your life." The man stands in front of Isa's grave when he suddenly hears the sound of a massive monster. He follows the noise, searching for it. The same giant creature that Inyo and Zero encountered earlier appears in front of him. The man mutters, "The time has finally come." He remembers when that monster attacked his village. Back then, he managed to shoot it in the eye. Now, he tries to aim for its other eye, but he can't focus. He tells himself, "Why am I hesitating?" The monster charges at him and attacks. Hearing the noise, Inyo and Zero rush to the scene. The monster strikes the man again, knocking him to the ground. He looks at his daughter's necklace and remembers what happened after the attack on the village. After regaining consciousness, he found the entire village in ruins. He checked on the person who had fought alongside him, then desperately searched for his daughter. When he found her, she was already dead. Back in the present, the man grips his rifle tightly and takes aim at the monster. From a distance, Inyo discreetly distracts the monster without the man noticing. The man fires a bullet straight into the middle of the creature's head, killing it instantly. At that moment, he feels victorious. He has finally avenged his daughter. Later, back at the restaurant, Inyo meets the man and hands him his daughter's necklace, saying, "I found this and figured it must be yours, since no one else is here, even though it doesn't really suit you." The man takes the necklace and says, "Let's have coffee together." Inyo turns to Zero and says, "This is the first time I've ever waited this long just to drink a cup of coffee." The next day, Inyo is in Magamil, fighting a monster and rescuing people from it. They thank him, and he walks away with Zero. Zero says, "Another mission successfully completed. I'm happy we got this job. Otherwise, we wouldn't have found anything to eat for lunch." Inyo replies, "Yeah, we only have ketchup left." She says, "I'm tired of eating rice with ketchup every day." Inyo responds, "All right, let's have meat today." She says, "We can't be wasteful. We don't know when the next mission will come." Inyo replies, "Fine, we'll eat potatoes." She says, "Yes, they're cheap and taste good." Suddenly, as they are talking, a man approaches them with a two-headed snake wrapped around him. But as he gets closer, it becomes clear that the snake is just playing with him and not attacking. The three of them start talking, and the man introduces himself as Robert. He explains that he studies the ecosystem of creatures in this region and discovers new species every day. As they talk, he suddenly spots an insect on a tree and rushes toward it, excitedly describing it to Inyo. Then he notices an animal on the ground, quickly picks it up, and tells Inyo, "You're lucky to see this, it's extremely rare." After setting the animal down, he says, "Are you ready to see my favorite place?" He takes them to a giant tree and shows them small birds living inside its fruit. He tells them that he has been raising them because their mother is gone. He then starts feeding them. Suddenly, a small monster appears, and Robert moves toward it, but Zero stops him. The monster sprays a gas, and Inyo quickly warns, "Don't breathe it in." He throws a fruit to distract the monster, making it chase after it and leave them alone. Not far from them, two YouTubers named DJZ and Baby Fat are filming a video. Their content revolves around torturing animals in Mag-a-meal. At that moment, they have an animal tied to a tree and are shooting arrows at it while recording. Meanwhile, Inyo and Robert are sitting by a lake, eating. Inyo says, if that monster had inhaled the gas it sprayed, it would have caused hallucinations, making it see its worst fear. Robert replies, "Lately, a lot of unnatural animal deaths have been happening. I've seen animals tied to trees with signs of torture. It's really concerning." At that moment, the two YouTubers finish filming their video, having killed the animal. However, one of them complains that the video isn't interesting enough and won't get many views. They start looking for something else to film and soon find the tree where Robert's birds live. One of them says, "We're going to burn this tree down. It'll make an unforgettable scene." At that moment, Inyo is saying goodbye to Robert, but they suddenly see smoke rising in the distance. They all rush toward it. Meanwhile, the two YouTubers continue filming as the tree and the birds inside it burn. By the time Inyo and the others arrive, the birds are already dead. Robert looks at the scene in sorrow, remembering when he first found them and decided to care for them. Inyo says, "This fire was intentional. It's too big to be natural." He then tells Zero, "Look for anyone nearby." Zero finds the culprits and even discovers their YouTube channel. The two haven't gotten far. Inyo asks Robert, "What do we do now? Don't you want to take revenge on them?" Robert pulls a knife from his bag and says, "We'll take care of them." When they confront the YouTubers, Robert asks, "You're the ones who burned the nest, right? Why did you kill them?" DJZ laughs and says, "Kill what? There's nothing here but monsters. They were just birds. Not worth all this fuss." As he speaks, he notices a large lizard nearby and says to Baby Fat, "This type of lizard sweats oil. It'll burn up quickly." He throws a lighter at it and shouts, "Film it before it goes up in flames." Robert gets furious, punches him, and raises his knife, about to kill him. But Inyo interrupts and says, "Look, the lizard is fine. Nothing happened to it." He then turns to the YouTubers and says, "You cooked it, so now you have to eat it, right? Or should I feed it to you myself?" Baby Fat panics and runs away. Robert tries to stab DJZ, but Inyo stops him, saying, "It's not worth lowering yourself to their level. Besides, we need to get out of here quickly. There's a monster heading this way." The other guy ran straight toward it. "I hope he'll be okay." DJZ shouts, "You're lying. You won't fool me." Inyo replies, "It's the truth." He ties DJZ to a rock and walks away with Robert. Zero spots the hallucination-inducing monster from earlier and makes it spray its gas on DJZ. She films him experiencing his worst nightmares and uploads the footage to his own channel. Inyo says, "That should make sure they don't come back." Robert thanks him and says, "I was really ready to kill them." Inyo responds, "No problem. In the end, you didn't." Inyo boards his aircraft, says goodbye to Robert, and leaves with Zero. Zero is sleeping when she starts having a nightmare. Inside the nightmare, she is locked in a room, her hands tied, a collar around her neck. Her clothes are torn, and her body shows signs of beatings and exhaustion. A figure approaches her room, and as soon as she sees him, a deep fear grips her. He enters the room and electrocutes her through the collar on her neck. In another room, a child of the same age hears her screams as she suffers. Zero wakes up from the nightmare in terror. Remembering the man's smile makes her even more afraid, so she rushes to Inyo's room. The moment she sees him, she feels safe. The next day, Inyo wakes up early, which is unusual for him. He tells Zero that he won't be having breakfast, which is completely out of character for him, and then leaves. Zero says to herself, "This must be a sign that the end of the world is near." She notices that the calendar has a mark on today's date with the word show. Zero gathers their friends who had previously helped them and tells them what happened. The three men say, "He woke up early, skipped breakfast, and left in a hurry. That can only mean one thing: golf." Zero tells them that she found the symbol show marked on the calendar. The professor says, that could be related to Shoin. Emilia asks, "You've never met Shoin before, have you?" Zero replies, "No, when I met Inyo, Shoin was already gone." Emilia then asks, "How did you meet Inyo?" Zero remembers her first meeting with Inyo. She had been held captive by the man from her nightmare. It turns out that it wasn't just a nightmare, it was a painful part of her past. In her memory, the man tells her, "Hold on to Inyo, or I'll electrocute you again." Terrified, Zero clings to Inyo, tears in her eyes. Inyo places his hand on her head, reassuring her, "Smile and don't be afraid. Someone sent me here to rescue you." Back in the present, Zero refuses to tell them the real story of how she met Inyo. Instead, she says something else, surprising them. Just then, Mr. Taboo, Aiza's father, enters and says, "If you don't lower your voices, I'll kick you all out." It turns out he owns the restaurant they're in. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure is sitting in the restaurant, watching them through a camera. The one watching them is the same man who had kidnapped Zero in the past. He orders his soldiers to move. At the same time, Inyo is in Magamil, at the house where he used to live with Shoin. He starts cleaning and organizing the place, sweeping the floors and fixing everything inside. He remembers the day he parted ways with Shoin, when Shoin told him, "You need to return to the human world." Inyo asked, "Will we meet again?" Shoin replied, "Probably not. But don't forget the promise you made me." He handed Inyo a picture of Zero and said, "If you two ever meet, keep her with you and protect her." Back in the present, Inyo takes the picture out of his pocket, looking at it. He remembers the day he went to the place where Zero had been imprisoned and says to himself, "I don't remember ever wanting to be a hunter." The scene shifts to Zero returning home. She walks in and says, "I'm back." She sees someone sitting in a chair and assumes it's Inyo, but when the person turns around, it's the man who had kidnapped her. At that moment, terror grips Zero. She remembers how he once forced her to kill a monster, and even though she obeyed, he still electrocuted her. She tries to attack him, but one of his soldiers stops her. Zero shouts, "Get out! That chair belongs to Master Inyo." The man smirks and says, "Your master isn't Inyo the hunter. Your master is me, just like I was 4 years ago." He holds up a collar identical to the one he used to put on her. Zero glares at him and says, "I will never be your test subject again." He replies, "I expected you to say that. But maybe this will change your mind." Behind him, a live video feed appears, showing Dandan. One of the man's soldiers enters the shop where Dandan is. Zero demands, "What are you going to do?" He smirks and says, "That depends on you. If you come back with me, I won't hurt him." Zero warns him, "If you hurt him, I won't let you get away with it." The man coldly replies, "Your time is up." Suddenly, the soldier inside Dandan's shop explodes. With eerie calm, the man asks, "Now, who is your master? Inyo the hunter or me?" Zero stands frozen in shock. Seeing her hesitation, he grows angry and says, "It seems you still don't understand." He then shows her live videos of all her friends. Each of them has one of his soldiers nearby, ready to explode at any moment. He asks her again, "Who is your master? Inyo the hunter or me?" Zero, having reached the peak of fear and despair, replies in a broken voice, "You are my master." Inyo returns from Magamil, but the moment he steps inside the house, he sees the villain appear on the screen. The man says, "It's been 4 years since we last met. Do you remember me? I apologize for the mess I've made, and for taking Zero from you without your permission." The moment Inyo sees Zero tied up with a collar around her neck, he remembers the day he rescued her. Back then, the villain had forced Zero to face a giant monster, just as he always did, threatening to electrocute her if she disobeyed. Zero thought to herself, "If life is this cruel, I'd rather be killed by the monster than be freed." She ran toward the monster, throwing herself at it. But suddenly, Inyo appeared, and she crashed into him instead. Back in the present, the villain tells Inyo, "Don't worry, Zero is fine. But let's take a look at the others, shall we?" At that moment, the screens show live footage of all Inyo's friends. Each one is standing next to a soldier, ready to explode at any moment. Inyo glares at him and says, "What do you think you're doing?" The villain smirks and says, "This is just the warm-up for my revenge against you." The flashback continues. Inyo had once told the villain, "You're all impressed by the power of this monster, but Mage Mill's creatures have an instinct to obey those stronger than them." The villain snapped, "Don't try to fool me with that nonsense." Then, he turned to Zero and ordered, "Hold him, or you'll be punished again." At that moment, Inyo snatched the remote control for her collar and crushed it. The villain was stunned. "He's too strong." Inyo told him, "Someone who doesn't treat others like humans doesn't deserve to be treated like a human." Then, he delivered a powerful punch, which left the scar on the villain's face, and destroyed his entire laboratory. Back in the present, the villain grins and says, "That was just the warm-up for my revenge against you." He then detonates all his soldiers around Inyo's loved ones. Finally, he says, "I'll be waiting for you in the place where you stripped me of everything. That is, if you can even get there." Inyo turns around and sees one of the soldiers as its disguise is removed, revealing a scorpion controlling it. The soldier explodes. From afar, Zero hears the explosion. After the villain blows up all the people Zero knows, he locks her up in the same place she was imprisoned in 4 years ago. Zero feels despair and starts remembering things that happened to her in that place. And one of the memories. Zero is standing, tied up, looking exhausted, while the villain stands before her with scientists. She says, Unit Zero is very hungry and can't do anything, but he brings in a huge monster and forces her to face it, and that makes her kill the monster against her will to protect herself. One of the scientists says, "We stopped seeing results after round 37, and there's no sign of increased physical activity or extraordinary imagination." So the villain tells them, "Prepare for the next round." The scientist says, "Unit Zero has run out of energy." The villain replies, "This weak state is exactly what we want. Exposing her to more suffering and despair is what will bring out her true power." He grabs the shock button, his eyes glinting, and presses it. After Zero remembers all that, she says, "I want to go home. I want to go back to Enio's house. Did he have a nice dinner? Is he even alive?" Then she reassures herself, "I'm sure he's alive and will come to save me." After that, someone slides food through an opening in the door. Zero looks through it and sees that the cell across from her is filled with many captives, including the red-haired man who was imprisoned with her 4 years ago. He tells her, "You should feel grateful they gave you food. You were always treated differently." Zero replies, "I know you from before. Are you also superhuman?" He says, "No, I was." She asks, "What do you mean?" He responds, "After the lab exploded, we all escaped, but I ended up homeless on the streets. They managed to capture me again, and stripped me of my power. We're nothing now but tools at his command. We're all going to die here, including you." Zero tells him, "I trust that Enio will come to save us. He did it last time." The red-haired man lets out a hopeless laugh. Then, soldiers approach and open the cell. He turns to Zero and says, "See, we're all going to die." Meanwhile, the villain is monitoring what happened after the house explosion and sees that Enio's aircraft moved after the blast. Enio is aboard the aircraft. The scene flashes back to the explosion. The moment Enio sees the person about to explode in front of him, he teleports to the rooftop quickly and gets into the aircraft. At the same time, the villain is in his lab, waiting for Enio to arrive. Behind him are all the people he stripped of their powers. He tells them, "I'm grateful to all of you. You've given me a great gift." He stands up and says, "Now that my work is done, I have one last task for you." A glass wall rises between him and them. Then, explosive scorpions crawl toward them, sinking their stingers into their brains. At that moment, Zero hears their screams of agony and terror. She wonders what's happening. Enio finally arrives in front of the lab. He boards a boat to cross the sea while the villain watches him and says, "Don't think reaching Unit Zero will be that easy." He looks at Zero, who keeps repeating, "I'm sure he'll come to save me." The villain says, "Oh, you haven't seen Enio die yet, have you?" Then, he shows her a recording of the moment the person exploded in front of Enio. Zero is shocked, breaks down in tears, and recalls her memories with him. She truly believes he's dead. But at that moment, Enio enters the lab. Due to the unstable structure, columns start collapsing on him, but he dodges them and sneaks through room after room. Then, he finds himself facing all the people the villain prepared for explosion. The villain says, "Doesn't this remind you of something, Enio? 4 years have passed. Unit Zero is happy to see you. I know it's been a long time for you, but for me, it feels like yesterday. I wanted to take my revenge on you as soon as possible, but thanks to you, we had to prepare first. You destroyed everything for me." Enio replies, "You're just reaping what you sowed." The villain smirks, "That's what criminals always say, but that's long forgotten now. And I'll accept your words gladly, because our roles have switched, and I'm the stronger one now." Enio demands, "Where's Zero? Give her back to me." The villain orders his controlled soldiers to attack Enio. One by one, they explode while trying to reach him. With each explosion he barely dodges, Enio weakens further. Zero hears the blasts. The red-haired man approaches Enio, and Enio breaks the collar around his neck. But the villain laughs and says, "You broke the wrong thing." Suddenly, the scorpion inside him detonates. Enio falls to the ground in shock from the explosion, unable to stand because of the continuous blasts. The villain approaches him now that he's weakened and says, "I knew I couldn't defeat you, but this is nothing yet. Enio gasps, "Where's Zero?" He struggles to his feet, conjures a sword, and attacks the villain. But the villain stabs him in the knee with a blade. Enio collapses to the ground, stunned. The villain smirks and says, "That's why I told you. You won't be able to defeat me. I'm an energy healer now. I've become superhuman." The villain remembers when he made one of his soldiers take the power from the red-haired man and give it to him, and as soon as he takes his power, he kills him. In the present, he tells Enio, "It was a very long journey. I had to gather 58 superhumans to become stronger than you, and now, you're the perfect person to test my strength on." Enio replies, "Then why don't you do it? I've changed too since then." The villain says, "Of course. Let's test and see who the stronger superhuman is." Enio, panting, stands up and creates a bomb. The villain tells him, "Wait a second, don't move. You need to remember this." He raises a detonator and tells Enio, "Isn't this a test?" Enio replies, "I thought so." The villain smirks, "I'm the one testing you. Look at the collar you just broke. A beginner like me needs an advantage." He detonates the collar, and Enio falls to the ground. The villain says, "Is that enough to convince you that I'm serious?" The bomb in Enio's hand disappears, and the villain laughs. The villain keeps hitting Enio, mocking him, "Aren't you going to make me regret this? This isn't even worth calling a test. If you had been this calm 4 years ago, we wouldn't be here now. But that doesn't matter anymore. Now, let's finish you off. But with this sword, you'd die too quickly. Let's make it less sharp." "Don't worry, this won't be a quick process." He hits Enio with an iron rod, but Enio blocks it. The villain smirks, "Didn't I tell you not to move?" He strikes him again, harder. He keeps hitting him, saying, "Don't move, or I'll kill Unit 0. Enio creates a bomb, making the villain throw it at the glass while attacking him, causing an explosion. Enio shouts Zero's name loudly. Zero is shocked, her eyes welling with tears of joy. He's still alive. The villain gets angry and hits Enio, saying, "I'll blow her up." Enio tells him, "If you do that, you won't get revenge on me. Zero was just bait to lure me here." Then he shouts, "Zero, can you hear me? You need to remember how we met." The villain stabs Enio with his sword, and Enio falls to the ground. After Enio defeated them and destroyed the lab, he got off the monster and told Zero, "Follow me. I'll protect you from now on, and you'll also get 3 meals a day." Zero asks, 3 meals? That means you must be my new master." She gets off the monster and says, "I'll do my best for you, master." Enio tells her, "It's not fitting for you to call me that. I'm not your master or anything. How about calling me sir? That makes me sound like a rich man, right?" He adds, "By the way, my name is Enio. What's yours?" She replies, "I'm Unit 0. Enio says, "That's a strange name. How about I call you Zero instead? Now, let's go eat." Zero smiles, feeling happy. She knows she's starting a new phase of her life, one without torture or fear. Back to the present, Zero cries as she remembers. The villain asks Enio, "Why aren't you fighting me? Is this a trick? Or is it because you know I'll destroy you along with me if I lose?" But this wasn't a good way to stall. "Not that it matters. You don't have the energy to resist me anymore. I can let Unit 0 go, but you have to kneel and beg me." Zero is shocked by what she hears and recalls another memory. She was standing beside the villain and 2 scientists, facing a massive monster. The villain told her, "This is the most dangerous monster in the lab. This is what you'll be fighting." Zero was horrified, thinking to herself, "I'm scared. This isn't like any other monster. This one will kill me if I fight it." She pleaded, "I can't. Please, someone help me." The villain electrocuted her, saying, "You have no idea how much I've invested in you. I need you to become superhuman as fast as possible." Zero begged, "I'm sorry. Please stop." In the present, Zero tells Enio, "Please, sir, don't do this. Don't do this for me." But Enio does it. He kneels before the villain. Zero recalls Enio's words, "Remember how we met." Zero activates her power, unleashing her full strength, and breaks free from her collar. At the exact moment Enio kneels, he knows Zero is about to free herself. And she does. She strikes the villain with the robot. Enio stands up, approaches him, and says, "I won't show you mercy even if you beg me." Then, he defeats him effortlessly. The villain falls unconscious. Zero carries Enio to her, and he asks, "Are you okay?" She replies, "I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble." Enio responds, "It's okay. I told you I'd protect you." Zero smiles. Enio tells her, "I'm starving. Let's go eat." Suddenly, the villain shouts, "Not so fast. Don't think you're done with me yet, Enio. We're just getting started." He eats a mangamil fruit. A massive energy surge bursts from him. Behind him, more mangamil fruits appear, and he devours them all. He falls from above and transforms into a massive, grotesque monster. He attacks them. Enio counters, striking him and slicing him in half. But the monster regenerates its body instantly. It lunges toward Zero. Enio strikes it, sending it flying into the cell door and making it chase him. Enio tells Zero, "Take me to the rooftop and get out. You know what to do." Zero understands and escapes, activating the screen. She leads Enio through the rooftop fan. The monster crashes into it but only gets minor scratches. Enio says, "That wasn't part of the plan." But the monster rises and growls, "I will never forgive you." Enio tells Zero, "Everything is going according to plan. I'm counting on you." The monster creates a giant hammer and smashes Enio with it. When it lifts the hammer, Enio is gone. The monster laughs evilly, saying, "I finally got rid of Enio." But suddenly, massive hands appear above it. Enio is flying in Zero's robot. He slams the monster with the giant hands, crushing it into the lab and causing an explosion. Zero waits for him at a distance with the boat. She brings him in, and Enio says, "Mission accomplished." He looks at the burning lab and thinks to himself, "Shown. I kept my promise to you." He looks at Zero and sees her looking sad. She asks, "All of them?" He nods, "Yes. They're all safe." After they reach the aircraft, they call the others, who are together. Emilia asks, "Are you all okay?" Enio replies, "Yes, we completed our mission here." Her father says, "We were near the sky whale ship. We took cover there." The rich man says, "My car is explosion-proof." Tabo adds, "There's definitely a shelter in my restaurant. I hid there." Zero asks, "You knew all this?" Enio replies, "Yeah. I made sure they were safe before I came here." Zero asks, "But aren't we forgetting someone?" Enio replies, "I could have saved him if he had Majamil." Suddenly, Dandan appears, shouting, "Why am I the only one?" Enio smirks, "What happened to your sensors?" Dandan, frustrated, yells, "You destroyed them." Everyone laughs. Enio and Zero watch the sunrise. Zero asks, "Where were you last night?" Enio replies, "I went to Shon's house. I go there every now and then to clean it up." Zero, "One day, I'll go to the depths of Majamil, and I want you to come with me. When that day comes, I want you to help me."